Hi guys, welcome on YouTube channel of Chess.com. I am Woman Grandmaster with very difficult last name, and in this video I'm gonna show you top 5 scholar-made attempts in Champions games. Before we dive into the games, I would like to show you the pattern if you have not seen it yet. Well, this happens when white goes with 1e4, black responds with e5, and white plays queen to h5. This queen gets into the game way too fast, attacks the pawn on e5. Now black plays knight to c6, guarding the pawn, and white goes with bishop to c4. White's two pieces are attacking on f7 and would like to capture this pawn, and if black is careless and plays knight to f6, then we have queen to f7, and this is a checkmate. As white's queen is supported by the bishop and black has no square to go with the king. So this is the shortest checkmates in chess, only 4 moves, and I wonder if you guys have ever checkmated your opponent with this pattern. Please do let me know in the comment section. Now let's see our first Champions game with attempt to checkmate the opponent with Scholar's Mate. And this is your favorite streamer, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura with white pieces against Krishnanan Sasekirian. The game has happened back in 2005 and Hikaru goes with 1e4. Black responds with e5. We have queen to h5. We already know the idea of this move. Knight goes on c6 and bishop to c4. Now black has a lot of moves to avoid checkmate and Sasekirian chooses the best one, g6, to cover this diagonal and attack the queen. Well, queen goes on f3 and once again threatens checkmate. Now black plays knight to f6 and this file is now just closed. White goes knight to e2. Usually knight likes to go on f3. This is the perfect square for the knight, but as queen got involved into the game rather too fast, now knight has to go on e2 square. Black responded with bishop to g7, we have knight to c3 to control the center, d6, d3, and the game has continued so long. It was actually 87 moves, and it did not end well for Hikaru. So guys, I'm gonna describe a situation and tell me what would you do. You're playing at the title Tuesday and you're paired up with the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Would you dare to play Scholar's Mate? Because in this game, here we have white goes with e4, Magnus Carlsen responds with e5, and we have queen to h5. Very ambitious move. This queen wants to capture the pawn. Magnus plays knight to c6, and then we have bishop to c4. I really wonder the reaction here of Magnus Carlsen when he saw this move. Well, he goes g6, and after queen to f3, he goes knight to f6. And here we have a couple more moves where actually black went for this bishop. This bishop is creating a lot of danger on this diagonal, so black just decided, let's get rid of this bishop. So here we have a trade of this knight and the bishop, then h6 to avoid any kind of bishop g5. So white decided to develop this bishop on this diagonal, and here we have really nice play by Magnus Carlsen. So white attacks on the king side with those pawns, and black is now trying to strike in the center. This is a very nice strategy. When your opponent is attacking on the side, let's say king side or queen side, you have to open up the center. So we have g5. White is trying to, at any cost, open the g file or h5, and now we have queen to a5, pinning this knight. Well, white's king is not the safest piece on the board, so he goes here long castle. And we have b5. The question is, who is the first to attack the king? So white responds with c takes b5 and d5. According to all the chess rules, this is a perfect play. We're trying to open up the queen side. That's where the opponent's king is castled, and now you want to just blow up the center. Scholar's Mate attempt 2 by Hikaru. Here we have this game between Hikaru and Filipov Anton, and we have 1e4, e5, queen goes on h5, and g6 once again. Hikaru plays queen to f3. Once again, gives a try to checkmate black's king. Black says, no, I see that. and knight to e2. We have seen already this kind of position earlier in the first game, so black plays bishop to g7 to make sure that the king is castled, and here Hikaru goes with d3. Black responds with d5, attacks right away in the center. White captures this pawn, and black goes with knight to b4. The pawn on c2 is hanging, so white has to play bishop to b3 to guard this pawn, and now we have knight to d5. The game was very interesting. White goes with h3 to avoid any kind of bishop g4, and after castle we have bishop to g5 to pin this knight. So c6 has been happened as the threat was here to capture one of those knights and win here the material. White goes with knight to c3 to challenge the centralized knight on d5. Black goes with h6 to attack the bishop, and here we have some of the trades, and at this position here we have the semi-open file for black. But in this kind of position, white has some sort of ideas to castle on the long side and then to push the pawn on h-file and open up the rook here on this file. So the game has continued with a5. Black wants to start some kind of queenside attack here. White stops that. Queen to e7. We have queen to e3 to attack this pawn. Knight to h5, guard the pawn, and also to jump on f4 square. Such a beautiful square for the knight. White actually invites the knight to go on f4, and here we have the trade of the knights and queen to e2. And at this point we have this position where black has pair of bishop and white has the bishop which controls this long diagonal and the knight which blocks the pawns at the same square as the bishop on g7. So it is actually double-edged position here. Black has some ideas, white also has some ideas, but the most interesting part of this game is the end game. So I'm gonna just jump right away to that part and show you the final end of the game. It is truly very beautiful. And here we have this end game where white has very active pieces. Both rooks are controlling the open files and the bishop is controlling this diagonal. As you can see here, those pieces are concentrated mainly on the queen side, and they are not actually so active. And the king is all the way here on the king side, just alone. So white is using this and plays rook to e7, gives a check. If king goes on the back rank, it will be a checkmate. So black goes to king h6 now, and here we have rook to d6. The pawn is hanging, and it's not just a pawn, it's going to be a checkmate. So king goes back on g-file, plays g6 to guard the pawn, and we have bishop to c4 attacking the rook. But what is actually the idea of this move is that white wants to play bishop to d3 and checkmate this king next move. There we go. This is the checkmate that happened in this game, and second attempt of Scholar's Mate in fact worked out. This game has ended in 39 moves. It was not a checkmate in 4 moves, but I think white got really nice play on the king side. This game has been played in 2018 at the World Rapid Chess Championship. Magnus Carlsen is against Wahidov Shamsidin, and he goes 1e4. Black responds with e5. We have queen to h5. We have bishop to c4 and queen to f3. The pawn on f7 is hanging. In the other games we have seen knight to f6, right? Now black decides to play queen to e7 to guard this pawn by the queen. However, this queen sort of stacks everything in black's position, right? Knight can't get in here, bishop can't get in here, but it should not be the biggest issue, unless you play against world champion Magnus Carlsen, right? So here white goes with knight e2, knight f6, and d3. White is planning to play bishop to g5 to pin the knight. I know there is this move, bishop to g7, but there's this very interesting idea of white knight c3, knight d5. So queen on e7 is simply misplaced. Black goes bishop to g7. We have knight to c3 and h6, of course. Otherwise, the bishop would just simply jump on g5 and next move could be knight to d5, and that's pretty much game over for this knight. Anyway, Magnus Carlsen goes with knight to d5. Black has to take this knight. Now pawn takes and attacks this knight over here. And when knight moves away, this move should be fine because we're attacking the bishop. Now white goes with d6. Very good move, because you can't capture by the queen as the pawn on f7 will be hanging, so you have to double your pawns in the center, and this light square bishop is not happy. Now Magnus Carlsen goes bishop d5, just blocks everything in the center, and after knight to c6, bishop to d2. You have to develop all your pieces and also just open all the roads for your king. You can castle on the short side or castle on the long side. Black goes with queen to f6, hoping for queen trade. White says, no, I need the queens. I am going to centralize my queen on e4 beautifully, and I'm gonna attack your king. So castle happened. There are some ideas where white wants to play f4 to open up the f file, as the queen here is simply misplaced and it should be knight on f6, right? So knight to e7, attacking the bishop. Instead of withdraw this bishop back on b3, white goes with knight to c3. Well, if you capture this bishop, if the knight gets on d5, good luck to kick this knight from d5. I think it's gonna be just stuck here forever. Instead of this move, here black goes queen to f5. That's a good idea to chase the opponent's queen and finally to trade these queens. I like that. I prove it. Queen to b4. Magnus says, I want to take the pawn on d6. Black goes with knight to d5, and king to h7. This is just a past move to me. We don't even try to guard the pawn, right? Because actually there was no way to guard this pawn. If you play queen to e6, then we have this fork and black is losing here a rook. So here we have king to h7. Knight to c7 first, attacking the rook, and now we have queen to d6. There are some threats on this diagonal, so this knight can jump on e6 or d5, and rook will be hanging. Black goes with b6. The idea is to play bishop b7 and to have some nice counterattack on the king side. So white goes with f3. There was kind of stopping black attacking on the king side move, sort of. But look at this, bishop goes on b7 anyway and develops the pieces, connects the rook. This is very important. And after rook to e1, we have rook to c8. White goes bishop to c3, the pawn on e5 is hanging, and this seems to be another pawn, central pawn. If this pawn is gone, then black's position will be simply lost. But look at this. Here black had surprise to queen, bishop to f8, and the question is where this queen goes. There's no any single square for this queen, and it is simply trapped. So white had actually give up the queen for only bishop and potentially the exchange. So this is not enough for sure, and the game just ended in few moves. And this is another game where the attempt of Scholar's Mate just did not work out. Alright guys, this is our final game of this video, and we have chosen a player, the greatest of all time in chess history, Garry Kasparov, who demonstrates well how you should punish your opponent if he or she dares you to checkmate in 4 moves. So he plays with black pieces against Boris Becker. The game has been played in New York back in 2000, and it's a part of the exhibition. White goes with 1e4, e5 we have the response, and queen to h5. After knight goes on c6, here white plays queen to f3. This is too fast, and it's better to play first bishop to c4 to attack this pawn and call for j6. Well, queen goes on f3, and this is a good chance to attack the queen, and Garry Kasparov goes with knight to d4, attacks the queen and the pawn on c2 at the same time. Queen now goes on c3. And if you have just noticed, queen on f3, queen on c3, this queen is not friends with the knights, because the queen takes all those natural moves where the knight should go. Well, anyway, black goes with knight f6, attacks the pawn on e4, and white responds with f3. Usually, just try not to play f3 or f6 moves because it weakens the diagonal, and you will see in the end of the game how crucial this diagonal was. So it's actually better to just play d3 in this kind of situation, or any other moves like bishop to d3 to guard the pawn on e4, but not f3 indeed. So we have g6 move, and after knight goes on e2, now black's knight on d4 is hanging, and if you trade the knights, then it's just a normal position. But if you play c5, like Garry Kasparov plays, then you're gonna have a very strong knight in the center. So white could not stand this knight in the center and captured it. Pawn takes on d4, and this queen has to move once again. On b3 at this time, bishop goes on g7, and we have here bishop to c4 attacking the pawn on f7. We have castle, and after c3, we do have d5. So now this center is open, and black has very good chance to use this moment and attack the king. White goes with bishop to e2, and white needs one more move just to castle and then try to develop the queen side. But we have this fancy move d3, attacks the bishop and it's a sacrifice, and bishop takes on d3. We do have now d takes e4. Don't only take this pawn in the center, but also attack this bishop by the queen. So there's no other move but to move this bishop away, and white decided to capture the pawn. However, it allows black to capture the bishop back with the knight, and now we have queen to h4. And you guys, I mentioned when white played f3, right, that this diagonal would be crucial in this game. So here we have a check. King is on run. Black just captures the pawn on e4, and there is a check. Rook has to be sacrificed here. There's no other way to save the king. And after king to c2, look at these pieces, all of them just squeezed on the queen side, and now black has the final move, bishop to f5, and this is in fact checkmate. King cannot run anywhere. So this was a very beautiful game, ended in 18 moves, and if your opponent actually plays in this way as white did, you can just punish as Garry did. You guys, in the end of the video, I would like to challenge all of you. How about you now go to the Chess.com platform and play a chess game and try to checkmate your opponent using this pattern, Scholar's Mate, and then do let me know in the comment section how did it go. I'll be waiting for you and I will read all your comments. This has been Woman Grandmaster Katie Tatola-Shriley. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you guys liked this video. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and also like this video, and I will see you in the next one.